Welcome to Discover Cape. This is a 30-minute program that will introduce you to fascinating people, take you to interesting places, and enlighten you on important events that happen in our region. The holiday season is close at hand, and what better way to get into the holiday spirit but to share the love of food. We'll travel north to St. Genevieve for a taste of French cuisine, and then south to Sykeston for some folksy fare. And our crown jewel, Stirring Words, a collection of Dr. Tom Hardy's favorite recipes. Stay tuned, it's going to be delicious.
Discover Cape is sponsored in part by Ameren.
The cavalry doesn't always sound a bugle. Sometimes it simply rolls out before dawn and quietly saves the day before you even know the day needs saving.
Passing gas can be deadly.
Whoa, oh, something's funky.
Passing gas releases a plume of toxic vapors.
Oh, honey, not in the car.
Like ammonia and hydrogen cyanide. And lethal poisons that can linger even when windows are open. Kids shouldn't be exposed to secondhand smoke. Don't pass gas, take it outside.
Things can get pretty ugly when you're bored. In an after-school program, you can find something way better to do.
Go to jail for a gun crime, and your family serves a sentence with you.
We traveled north to St. Genevieve, Missouri, to visit the Felix Valle home. This state historic site hosts the annual La Réveillon, or the Awakening. The home is prepared with a traditional French feast for visitors to view, and music fills the home with the unique and the familiar. Jim Baker is our guide to the past.
The celebration in the home was probably a fairly lively activity. Celebrations for the French oftentimes involve music, storytelling, get-togethers for families. St. Genevieve is an amazing remnant of the French colonial history here in the state of Missouri, and actually in this whole region in the mid-Mississippi River Valley. The settlement started out in the late 1740s down right along the river. It was an agricultural settlement to start out. After a big flood in 1785, the village moved up to the present location. We have an amazing collection of historic buildings here in St. Genevieve, houses that date back into the 1700s. Most notably, the architectural style that the French used in the colonial period, which was houses that were built from logs. But instead of being set horizontally, the logs in the French houses were used vertically. and it's a style known as poteaux en terre or poteaux sur sol, which mean post in the ground or post on a sill. And so today, this is one of the very few places in the United States that you can come and visit and see those historic buildings in their original setting in that very rare architectural style. St. Genevieve is a remarkable place, and it's a remarkable place for people to visit. And the community has been welcoming tourists, scholars, students for literally decades because of the important architectural history here in St. Genevieve. As part of that whole feeling that you get in St. Genevieve, just walking down the streets is a history lesson in itself because of the multitude of historic styles of buildings and things that are going on. The community really has gotten behind this historic preservation effort in St. Genevieve. People have done private restorations of their homes. There are restored bed and breakfasts, restaurants, historic house museums. There's a real effort to preserve the colonial history that's here in St. Genevieve because it's a very rare place, and you can only find this kind of architecture in just a few places in this continent. The state historic site here in St. Genevieve started way back in 1970, and originally it was the Felix Valle house composed the entire site, but we've expanded a great deal since that point. The Felix Valle house itself is an amazing example of kind of the American influence here in St. Genevieve. And this little community was under French control originally, then Spanish control in the latter part of the 1700s. Then it was part of the Louisiana Purchase after 1803. Americans started coming west into the territory and brought a whole new government, culture, language, and architectural styles followed as well. This particular house was built in 1818 by a man from Philadelphia. His name was Jacob Philipson. He was a merchant in the community, and so the house was built to have a residence and a store in the same structure. Philipson sold the building then in 1824 to the Valle family, one of the very important early French colonial families here in St. Genevieve, and a young couple, Felix Valle and his wife Odile, came to live in the house. They occupied it for the next 70 years. They were one of the really influential families in the community, and the family history goes way back into the colonial period throughout the 1800s then. Felix and Odile were very much part of the community. Odile was a very generous benefactor of the Catholic Church and school here in St. Genevieve, and they continued on the tradition of having a business and a residence in the house. So today, as visitors come to see the home, they're going to see what it looked like in the 1830s when the Menard and Valle store was in operation in part of the house, and Felix and Odile Valle lived in the rest of the house as their home. Christmas would have been a very religious celebration for the French here in St. Genevieve, and if you had been here back in the early part of the 1800s at the time of Christmas, Christmas Eve would have been the big part of the celebration. The celebration was known as Le Réveillon, which in French means the awakening. It's really the awakening of the Christmas celebration. It's what we try and recreate here at the Felix Valle house during our French Christmas open house. This was a magnificent celebration, and it was one that you would never forget if you experienced it at that time. Part of it was the anticipation of the event, the cooking and all the preparation for what was to happen after midnight mass, I'm sure was a thing that people looked for and anticipated really throughout the year. After church was over, they would come back to the home for a magnificent feast. And we try and recreate that feast as closely as we can in the dining room of the Felix Valle house. Tradition called for 13 different desserts at the celebration, which would have been probably the highlight of things to come. But as far as food would have been concerned during the celebration, they put out all the stops. And so they probably would have had a roast turkey or roast goose as part of the celebration, different kinds of sausages, breads, cheeses, wines, maybe some specialty things that came up from New Orleans on some of the steamboats. The 13 desserts actually are very symbolic. There are 12 for the 12 apostles, and the 13th dessert was for Christ. So, as part of our celebration, we recreate 13 different historic desserts here at the Felix Valle house. We have those out displayed on the table to give visitors a sense of what they might have experienced if they had been lucky enough to spend Christmas Eve with Felix and Odile Valle. Our French Christmas open house this year is going to be held on Sunday, December the 10th from 1 to 7 p.m. It's a free event, and we encourage all of our friends to come and visit experience this French Christmas celebration as you might have seen it in the early 1800s here in St. Genevieve. As part of our French Christmas celebration, a marvelous historic musical group known as the Peacocks performs in our parlor during the celebration of Le Réveillon. They play a lot of early French music, but a lot of traditional American music too for Christmas time celebrations. So visitors get a chance to hear some old-fashioned hammered dulcimers, and they enjoy just the whole ambiance of the celebration here in the house. It's a great way to kick off your own personal Christmas season and celebration, and you'll hear some old-time favorites and maybe some French music that you hadn't experienced before.
Find these highlights on any sports network. Tonight, no medals will be handed out and no trophies to hoist. These are not made for TV games, but when you've got a deep freeze full of 16-ounce ribeyes, pork roasts, and venison sausage, you'll be cheering them on nonetheless. After all, in the untelevised wake of the storm, there's much more at stake than frozen steaks.
You have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to be heard.
Anything you say can't be used
What you say will be listened to with dignity and respect. You have the right to information and assistance. Justice isn't served until crime victims are.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems, visit checkyearly.com, a public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
It is the privilege of VA to honor America's veterans with the excellent health care they have earned. And it is the nurses of VA, men and women of all backgrounds, who help to make that quality health care possible. VA Nursing, a career in caring. Contact vacareers.com.
Who'd go out on a night like this? We do. The very worst brings out the best in us.
Dr. Tom Harte is a man of many talents. He's a newspaper columnist, a TV host, a radio personality, a celebrated chef, a world traveler, and now a famous author. From his famous cheesecake to his favorite pancakes, Stirring Words is a recipe collection for the ages.
I started teaching here in 1966, actually, only a year after I had graduated, believe it or not. I came back and began then in 67, I take it back. I taught for a year in high school in St. Louis, at Hazelwood High School, and then returned here in 67. Yeah, I have a wife, my wife of 41 years. In fact, she's the one to whom the book is dedicated. In the front it says, "To my wife for 41 years, still my favorite dish." And we have 2 children, a daughter who is in her 30s and a son who is a few years younger than that, who's a musician. He lives out in California. My daughter's in St. Louis and she works for a pharmaceutical company. So that's our family. I eat, therefore I cook. I mean, my interest in cooking really arises from my interest in food, and I love to eat. I grew up in a family in which eating was an important activity. My mother was a great cook. She wasn't a trained or a fancy cook, but she always had great meals on the table. Desserts were a specialty. We had desserts at lunch as well as at dinner. We had snacks all of the time. I mean, most of the activities in the Harte household revolved in some way around food. So it was that interest in food which really got me interested in cooking, particularly when I wound up in graduate school and my wife had a full-time job and I was on a fellowship and theoretically had more time to do some of the cooking. I started taking over some of the chores of cooking, and one year decided I would do all of the Christmas baking, and then one thing led to another. Business really at the behest of my good friend Lachey Lau, a faculty colleague. Joe Lau and I taught in the department, and we got together fairly often, and sometimes we would fix cheesecakes, and he was always saying, you know, these cheesecakes are good enough, you could make a business out of it. And so she got Jeremiah's Restaurant, a local steakhouse in Cape Girardeau at the time, to agree to buy 4 of my cheesecakes a week to see if they had any kind of possibility as a business. So she really got me into the cheesecake business. I was making cheesecakes. In fact, one time we did a party in which we had like 8 or 9 cheesecakes, and that was the focus of the event. But she got me into the cheesecake business, and then it just kind of grew from there. Actually, the title, once we got started in that business, we were looking for different kinds of names that we might come up with that we thought were clever. And it turned out that my daughter that summer worked at Jeremiah's. She had a job as a waitress there. And so she was in the habit at the end of each meal of asking the customers, would you like a slice of my daddy's cheesecake? And then all the other waiters, seeing that sometimes this would actually improve sales, would start doing the same thing. So everybody there was referring to it as my daddy's cheesecake, even though, she was the only one who could legitimately say that. And the name kind of stuck, and the more we thought about it, Lachey and I said, well, why do we need to search for anything else? That's the name for our business. So we trademarked it. She came up with a little logo, which is sort of a caricature of me with the mustache and the chef's hat, and that's how it began. And then it was very successful at Jeremiah's. I can remember the owner of Jeremiah's calling me at home once and saying, we've got a real run on this. This is the holiday season. You think you could give me 25 cheesecakes by, tomorrow or the next day? We were all doing this in our home. And then finally we got a professional kitchen, and we branched out to other restaurants, and then finally we ended up with our own storefront in downtown Cape Girardeau. Well, after we did that for a while, and it was great fun, both us, the Hartes and the Laus, who were the co-owners, were getting to the point at which we were considering retiring altogether rather than retiring from teaching and moving into the cheesecake world. And so we had developed the business to a particular level, and then we sold it to Wes Kinsey.
My name's Wes Kinsey, and I'm one of the partners here at My Daddy's Cheesecake. I started working for My Daddy's in '94, helping out during the Christmas season, and I helped for 2 Christmas seasons, and then we bought the store then in 1996. The logo, we toyed around a lot with changing it a little bit over the years, but it is such a well-recognized symbol around the Cape Girardeau market and in St. Louis also, that when you've got something that works so well for a business, there's no need to change it. That's what our reputation has been built on, is that quality. Tom set really high standards in the very beginning, and we've not wavered from that. We still use the exact same recipe that Tom developed all those years ago in his kitchen. We make bigger batches of it, but it's the same recipe that he put together. So the quality is there. People expect that out of My Daddy's Cheesecake, and we do that with all of our products. If it doesn't come up to that high expectation that the My Daddy's Cheesecake name carries, then we don't make it.
And they moved it on to several levels beyond where we had it, which just tickles me to death, because the product still seems to be accepted in the area, and they seem to be doing well with it. But life is uncertain. You should eat dessert first, which is the motto they still use at My Daddy's Cheesecake. But I think even if life were not uncertain, I'd still eat dessert first. You've asked about the other things that I do. I've been fortunate to be able to keep fairly busy doing things that I like in retirement. I do this newspaper column, and that was done, basically the managing editor of the newspaper came to me and asked me if I would be interested in writing an occasional column, and I did. And I can't believe it's been 10 years now almost that column has been running, and I have great fun with it because, like the book, there are recipes, but it also looks at the history and the background of different kinds of foods or different kinds of periods in culinary history, or whatever the case might be. So I do that. And then I also have a little radio program. It's a classical music program, but it airs from 11 to 1 o'clock. So it's called the Cafe Concerto because it's over the lunch hour. And the little stick that I added to it is I run it as though it were a restaurant. So instead of just having the main symphony, it's the main course. You know, the first piece of music is our hors d'oeuvre. You know, the last little piano piece is our dessert. You know, and then we'll talk about, you know, a morsel of Mozart or a bite of Beethoven, or the one my wife came up with, a scoop of Schubert. And so it has a kind of a culinary a premise. In other words, it's not a playlist, it's a menu. And then I also do a public affairs show for the radio station and also for the local cable access channel as well. And again, all of these things have sort of been an outgrowth, really, of my interest in and love for food. I do a lot of traveling. That's maybe my second favorite thing after eating, or, you know, the best of all worlds is to go to some place on a trip and then see what restaurants and foods there are there. And not a few of our travels have reflected that interest. In fact, we took a Mediterranean cruise one year, and one of the stops that we made was the town of Mayonne. But we went to Vienna once so I could taste test the competing versions of the soccer torte. That's the famous torte there. And there were two competing establishments that claimed to have the original. I went to Morocco to see if I could find the best couscous and the best implement to make couscous. So usually when we travel, there's some element of food connected with it in some way. I went to Machu Picchu, which was a wonderful experience there in Peru, and there's a grain there called quinoa, which is just starting to be well recognized in this country, that I wrote an article about. Usually, most of the trips I take end up spawning an article or two because there's something that I run across in my travels that has some kind of a culinary connection. So yeah, the travel and the food tend to link up pretty well. In fact, I even did an article on cruise ship dining because I've done my share of cruises, and of course you eat lots on cruises, so I'm usually looking for the food angle. People had told me as the column progressed that they liked it and that sometime I ought to put together a collection, and I, you know, would listen to that and be flattered by that. And I did happen to mention to Susan Swartout, who's the person in charge of the university press here at Southeast Missouri, that when she said something about a column, well, maybe you ought to think about putting it together as a book. Half joking, but also half serious as well. And after a while, she said, you know, I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. So that's how it really came about.
Stirring words, reflections and recipes from a hearty appetite came from, of course, Tom's column started it all off. Such an entertaining and wonderful read that everybody enjoys it. He said one time to me when I complimented him on it, well, maybe we should make it into a book. And he was half jesting, and I took him very seriously and said, that's a great idea. It's been very well received, not only in our area, but we've had a lot of interest in St. Louis too. Tom has been talking to Deerbergs, who are interested in having a cooking class in conjunction with the book signing. And there are several bookstores up in the St. Louis area that regularly have readings or demonstrations that are interested in this. And of course, people in the area have been clamoring for it. The Southeast Bookstore, the week before we got it in, called me at least 3 times to check and see if the book was there. They'd had so many requests for it. But working with Tom was wonderful.
It was a great experience. It took us about 1.5 years really to put it all together because we had to go through and select the columns, decide which ones we thought should be included and which shouldn't. And we had to look at the recipes and go back and trace them back, because most of the recipes are not brand new recipes. They're adaptation of recipes that you'd find in other places, and we always wanted to give scrupulous credit to where we got them and where the idea came from. And so on. So that's really how it started. It really was an outgrowth of the newspaper columns. We're doing book signings at various places here in Cape Girardeau and also in St. Louis. And the interesting thing when you're doing a cookbook signing, And we've done this in a couple of places, the public library, Barnes & Noble, the university itself. We do it with a cooking demonstration as well, so we don't just show up with a book that we're ready to sign, but we do one of the recipes in the book as well. There are 200 some odd recipes in the book. About half of them are for desserts, so there are plenty to choose from in doing a cooking demonstration. So it's a demonstration, a cooking demonstration, and a book signing. I hope when people read the book they'll see that food is, first of all, a serious and worthwhile topic of its own. It's not a frivolous topic. It has a history and a culture and a background like any other topic. I mean, you can overdo it, certainly, but it is a topic worth serious study and interest and investigation. And also it's part of what holds us together as community.
Yes, you are. Come here. Let's see how this looks.
Hey, how's my little horse?
She's a lion.
Yes, she is.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. When you adopt a child from foster care, just being there makes all the difference.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
An industrial symphony of man and machine, growling engines and elbow grease, backup plans and watchful eyes, mountains of fuel, teeming with big yellow brontosaurs that could pick monster trucks out of their teeth, all to make sure the turbines whirl, so the lines buzz, so the night lights of the neighborhood flicker to life when called upon.
Don't walk. Don't walk. Walk. Do not enter. Hot dogs. Definitely like hot dogs. Motorcycle club. Everything must go. Ghostly ghouls. Don't look at that, Teddy. Body piercing. Ouch.
Everyday moments can become teaching moments because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
We've traveled back in time to see a classic French feast and visited with a cheesecake king, but we couldn't miss an opportunity to remind you of a local favorite, Lambert's Cafe. Lambert's Cafe, known nationwide for their throwed rolls, is located just off Interstate 55 in Sikeston, Missouri. This great family restaurant has been in business for over 60 years. Brandon Arnold, a server, knows all about this local curiosity.
It's always been a family restaurant that they established in 1942 by Earl and Agnes Lambert. Norman Lambert, he's the guy that originally started throwing the rolls. The place gets so crowded sometimes that there's just a guy across the room. They'd walk around, ask very politely, ask if you want to roll at your table. And one day a guy across the room just said, just throw the darn thing. So Norm threw it across the room, and ever since then they've been throwing rolls. That's how the throwing of the rolls originated. Right now I think we see pretty close to 500 at max capacity. We probably got close to 400 sitting down in there right now. And no telling how many in line, but I'd say max capacity is pretty close to 500.
I came 6 hours from Hamilton, Mississippi to get to Lambert's.
From Chicago area, and we're visiting my friend Janie, and my girls want to come here because they love the tossed rolls.
The Rose.
Joplin. We love
Lambert's. We love Lambert. It rocks.
We love Lambert.
Thanks for taking this journey with us. Next month, we'll take a trip to a Christmas tree farm. visit with Santa, and listen to some traditional Christmas music. Each month we will take this journey where there are many places to go, there are many interesting people to meet, and so many new things to discover. Join us again as we discover Cape.